Dr. De Guzman have covered a lot already. So basically, some of the data that we tackle, so we generally use data obtained from the data drop of the Department of Health, and we also augment this with data obtained from other sources. And then what we do with that data, it's more of a data interpretation. And there's always there's this term that they call, uh, Guido, like garbage in, garbage out. So if the data was not very good, the results that we would obtain would not be good as well. But we think that we have been making reasonable projections on the situation of the COVID-19 in the country. So this attests to the fact that we believe that the data from the Department of Health is quite reliable, especially more recently. So we understand that there were challenges in the early stages of the pandemic. Data was done, inputted manually, and we also in the OCTA group were, tinkering with the data more or less manually. So some of the things we calculate are the reproduction number. We make projections based on that, projections in cases, projections in hospitalization. We have also done other research, for example, vaccination roadmap and policy recommendations. And of course, we have been doing this as an independent research group. And the reason we have been doing that, so we can communicate it to the public, the media, and the government. And so we can advise the government and the public on courses of action based on science. And we also do this to come up with key insights and findings that are relevant for policy and decision making. And what we also do represents the scientific and academic communities. So in fact, just to illustrate, this is our very first report on April 8th. It was actually just a few of us, and then within a few reports later, we were joined by several other esteemed colleagues. So that includes Professor Alampay and Iro, Dr. Michael T, Dr. Benjamin Ko, Father Nicanor Austriaco, and many others, Dr. Butch Ong, and Professor Benjamin Vallejo. So our team has expanded. We have included many other, many specialists in their own fields. So I know I probably missed a few names. This was actually our first projection that we made on April 8th. And in fact, we were looking at projections in the trend, and we see that the actual data, so the projection was in purple here, but the actual data was in this sort of dark blue curve. And our projection was actually very close for the first month. And this was a long-term projection. And that's part of the reason why we keep our projections, as close to, close to around 1 month. Just as with weather forecasts, long-term projections are inherently problematic, and they're also not very useful for decision. I mean, they can be useful for decision making, but at least in our case, in our country, decision making is usually done on 2 to 4 weeks intervals. And this was actually a report we published on March 1. Again, we interpret data, and at that point in time, we were seeing a surge in cases, and this was actually reported. In fact, we started reporting on this in late February, so as the cases were already rising. And this is a projection that we made back in February, and we see that the projection at that time was actually matched with the number of cases that were observed at that time. And later on, the cases actually exceeded our projections, and we had to revise the projections. So this is an example of what we look at. So this is the number of cases in the NCR, and we can see that the trend has improved significantly. So we look at several trend lines, the moving average, and polynomial trend lines. We also calculate the reproduction number. This is what we have for the year from June 1st, 2020 until present. So this is for the NCR. And as Professor Alampay has showed, we do look at it also on a granular level, thanks to the data drop, which allows for a more granular look at the data. So we look at several indicators, and we also, when we have data, we also look at economic impact, and this was actually used as the basis for the prioritization of the vaccination in the NCR Plus, because as we can see here, in 2020, 70% of the lost economy of the country was due to the lost economy in NCR, Calabarzon, and Central Luzon. And again, I'm keeping it short. Thank you so much for the invitation.
The digital age is here. The change has been exponential. That the way we receive news and information has drastically exceeded expectations. Data-driven analytics is not a fancy word anymore that gets thrown around to impress. It has become a byword for a fast-growing digital media that delivers timely, comprehensive, useful information, received by an audience whose stature in terms of understanding the world we live in is increasing leaps and bounds. We are now in a world highly integrated due to digital media, and now more than ever, socially evolved, connectivity, advocacy-driven demand, and engagement. And the data points that govern these metrics are within your grasp. Blueprint.ph is a communication research firm focusing on big data, thick data, artificial intelligence, and online sentiment analysis, is in the forefront of this amazing transition in our country. As we introduce our new Philippine Data Newsroom,